Hey, Lake Point, Pastor Michael here to get you caught up on a sermon from our series, Make It Personal. A series filled with special interviews and guest speakers that are challenging us as a church to embrace the outcast, the outsider, and the overlooked, just like Jesus did. Now, as Pastor Nate shared, Luke's gospel is where we find many stories about Jesus caring for these types of people. Luke is distinct from the other gospel writers in that he was the only one who wasn't Jewish. It's why in his gospel account he presents Jesus as the savior for all of mankind, the Messiah for the masses. And so he deliberately focuses on stories where Jesus engaged people the Jews did not accept. In first century Jewish culture, you were an outcast if you were a leper or a tax collector. You were an outsider if you were a Roman soldier, and you were overlooked if you were a widow or a prostitute. These people had little or no value in Jewish society, and the religious leaders held them in complete disregard. But then Jesus shows up, and he's unlike any rabbi they had ever seen. Jesus honored those who were disgraced. He befriended those who were marginalized. He embraced those who were rejected. He forgave those who were shunned, and he believed in those who were broken. If you were to sum it up in a single statement or phrase, Jesus made it personal. He touched people who had diseases. He spoke respectfully to a scandalous woman. He wept at the tomb of a friend. He broke a rule to get someone out of trouble. He met leaders privately in the middle of the night. He washed his disciples' feet. He invited himself to wild parties, and he played with little kids. It's incredible. Jesus never got so busy trying to save everyone that he didn't stop to help someone. In Jesus' efforts to save the world, he still made time to focus on the individual. Think of the story of Zacchaeus, which Joe Amaral writes about in his book, Jesusly. A lot of people don't realize the context of this story. Jesus is en route to Jerusalem. He's at the height of his popularity. His Sermon on the Mount has gone viral. His Transjordan tour has been wildly successful. He's gaining more and more followers every single day. And as he passes through Jericho, the crowds have literally lined up to greet him. But what they do not realize is that Jesus is days away from laying down his life for the sins of mankind. And this is why Jesus is traveling to Jerusalem. Unbeknownst to them, Jesus very much has the cross on his mind. And this is his mission. This is why he came to earth. But in the midst of saving the planet, he spots Zacchaeus up in a tree, this notorious businessman who had wanted to get a better glimpse of this rabbi passing through town, and Jesus does the unthinkable. He stops and he calls out to him, identifying by name and inviting himself over to his house for a meal. I mean, the crowd was in disbelief. When they looked at Zacchaeus, they saw a man who was driven by personal greed. They saw an individual who would use anybody to get ahead, and they saw somebody who had hurt their community. But not Jesus. Jesus saw a man with intrinsic worth. He saw an individual who reflected God's image. He saw someone with extraordinary potential. And friends, that's what it means to make it personal. To see people the way Jesus sees them. To see the outcast, the outsider, and the overlooked with a heart of love and compassion. What's fascinating about the Gospel of Luke is the seemingly small interaction with Zacchaeus is actually the last recorded personal encounter Jesus has before he dies. It's as if Luke is saying, don't miss this. People are what matter most to God. If you're going to follow Jesus, you've got to make it personal. You got to slow down and see people the way Jesus sees them. Well, friends, enjoy jumping into discussion questions. Be sure to check out the full-length interview Pastor Nate did with the Leamington Community Hope Center team, which you can find on our app, our website, or our YouTube page. And I'll see you next week. And don't forget, make it personal.